Well, I was 97.
28th,
Visitor and spent a
so
week in
that's
so I'm sitting here now, so I
Tuesday?
could-
Wednesday?
Right.
For a week.
Yeah.
Like a month or week.
That's kind of neat.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, during the, yeah,
97.
was the
The
after.
other thing is that we're retiring this June,
Right.
so we're kind of, I'm saving leave, and I'm using the check to put it back here.
Sure.
So we don't usually like kind of for Christmas anyway. Thanksgiving is always the last holiday.
There ain't nobody else down, well, actually, there wasn't anybody until the snow, and then I got caught. I was 6 months now.
Oh, really? Yeah. Well, you had the first one, but.
We all set, Julie?
Yep, we're ready to go.
Okay, we'll go ahead and call to order this regular meeting of the City of Leavenworth Planning Commission. We do have a quorum. Commissioners have received copies of the minutes from the last meeting on October 1st. Are there any additions or corrections to be made to the minutes? Okay, if not, I'll take a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
I motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you. We have a motion.
Second.
And a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. New business, item number 1, 2018-18 special use permit on 2400 South 15th Street. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a special use permit request to allow a solar panel installation of over 500 square feet of collection surface. The development regulations do limit the collection surface to 500 square feet. Anything over that requires a special use permit, and the property owner here is requesting a installation with 598 square feet of collection surface. It is an existing single-family home, and they are proposing to put the solar panels on the east and the south side. It's the front of the house, and then the side, they're the two sides visible in the picture that you can see. So the commission may recommend issuance of a special use permit when it finds that 4 criteria have been met, so I'll just go through those. The first is that the proposed special use complies with all applicable provisions of the ordinance. Staff does believe that the application complies with all regulations of the city. The second is that the proposed special use permit at the specified location will contribute to and promote the economic development, welfare, or convenience of the public. Solar collection systems do provide numerous economic and environmental benefits to the community as a whole, as well as the actual property owner. The third is that the special use will not cause substantial injury to the value of other property in the neighborhood in which it is located. Staff does not believe that that would be the case for this application. And the fourth is that the location and size of the special use, the nature and intensity of the operation involved or conducted in connection with it, and the location of the site with respect to streets giving access to it are such that the special use will not dominate the immediate neighborhood so as to prevent development and use of neighboring property in accordance with the applicable zoning district regulations. And the proposed solar array will be located so as not to interfere with any other properties. It will be contained wholly on the roof of the existing structure. So staff would recommend approval of the special use permit based on that analysis. I can answer any questions you might have, and the property owner is here as well to answer questions.
Any questions for the staff on the report? Have we had a special use permit for this sort of use in the past?
We have, the only one that we've had come through was not a residential installation. It was with the university, St. Mary's. They put a solar installation on top of a new covered parking area that they have there on the very southwest corner of the campus on Muncie and, what is it, McDonald? No. Hughes, yes. On Muncie and Hughes, they put in a installation there. All the other residential installations we've seen have been at or under the 500 square feet.
And were there any correspondence from any neighbors regarding the permit?
Nope, we received no comments from any neighbors after we sent out notification.
Okay, at this time, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Is there anybody who'd like to speak for or against the proposed special use? Doesn't appear to be. I'll close the public hearing at this time and open it up for discussion among the commissioners.
I have a friend who is a retired engineer, and he lives on Shrine Park Road, and he has solar panels. And went through the process to get approval within the last 10 years through the commission. And I was asking him, as an engineer and everything else, with the things that has been stated in terms of the solar panels, in terms of, efficiency, there's no moving parts to them, mounted on your roof, and just key things about these solar panels. So, as our report indicates, that this makes sense. Many people want to do it to be environmental friendly. Some of them have it hooked up to their hot water heater or different parts of their house. He has had no problem with neighbors all around him. Doesn't see any impact to other people's property value by having them on his house because they're neatly installed. Once they're installed there, they're permanent on there. It's a permanent type thing, again, with no moving parts. So again, I kind of want to ask someone who's gone through the process with us and assess the pros and cons of any issues. Was there any issue that he could think of? And he said certainly not, and more people probably in the future will need to look at that for an option when they build homes or look at solar panels.
And I would think it would add to your property value in a sense, because you are saving money and it's good for the environment.
They're permanently installed and they're placed in the right location to maximize, the sun as much as possible on that. And so everything that was in the staff report that Julie shared and the information I received from an engineer who has one is that no effect on property value, no negative effects with it, no big issues probably. They're not, some people might say, well, they're ugly. Well, now that's an opinion. Ugly is an opinion on them, but they're useful, they're beneficial and fuel efficient. So I saw nothing after talking to what I call a professional that would indicate to me that there'd be any reason. And in fact, we may look at that because we have, if it exceeds 500 square feet, it has to come through a commission maybe for a special permit. This is something probably needs to be handled at another time. But we may need to look at that in the future because if they become more popular, we may not want to have it saying that if it's less than over 500, you have to come to us.
For a special permit.
For a special permit.
Every time.
But I think that should be done another time because this is strictly an issue on this request for approval at this moment. So everything I've learned today was indicate to me that this is a positive thing and no reason for me to say, even consider a no to it.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
When my husband and I first got married, we lived over on Western Street, and he had solar panels on the roof. And he had direct vents that came in at both ends of the house, and it really provided a lot of warmth. In the wintertime, there was always warm air coming in through those. It's definitely a positive thing to have for the homeowner. I don't know how it will affect the neighbors. Ours were on the back side of the house. This will be on the front but it's going to be, I assume they're going to be flush with the roof. They're not going to be standing straight up or something like that.
They're flush at the angle they're supposed to be at.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, because the sun goes the direction that my house was facing, I had to go to the front, and the east side, or I just had to go without because it's just the way the house is. I had no other choice than to put it in the front. But they are the angle of the roof is supposed to be the pitch that they need, so I just kind of lucked out in that manner. But if I'm allowed to just add a little bit.
Come up to the podium, please.
Yeah, that's a lot better.
I don't want to talk loud. The company that's doing this, and the reason why I decided to go with solar is that the house was built in 1976, so it's got 6-inch walls, which isn't normal in Leavenworth. Most of them are 2x4s, but they only put the insulation in the attic the same thickness as the walls, which is the 6 inches. So I only have an R18 up in the attic. So the cold really beats down on the ceiling. So when I have a ceiling fan, I turn the ceiling fan, they can literally feel the cold air come down just radiating through the roof. They're now got to change that and add it and make it an R50 value up in the attic, and that's all part of the value. I already changed my hot water tank to a tankless water heater, so it's not using any gas whatsoever except for when you need the hot water at that time. So I don't have hot water and electricity going all the time. So my house is really not using a whole lot of electricity other than I had to plug in a truck during the winter, and I have an RV in the back that has to be continually plugged in because of the batteries. So now that all the walls and the ceiling now is all going to be R50, and all my windows have been replaced, I'm supposed, they guarantee it's supposed to be 80%. And that's their goal, is to get you at 80%. But then once you get the R20 in, and take it to R50, my system's supposed to be up to 95%. So that means I'm gonna be at 95%. The more homes that you go with this, and as they start going, you're gonna have a problem, because they're gonna try to use every bit of that space as possible. The first one they came up with to keep it under 500 only gave me 68%. And nobody's gonna spend $30,000 for 68%.
Yeah.
It's just not feasible. So for me to get it at the 80%, I had to go that extra side.
If you don't mind that comment he just made, it's kind of reinforcing what I was told, is that the 500 square foot is something we need to look at. It's too restrictive, it's too probably low of a number for the future.
I think it's one of the things we're looking at tonight.
Right, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, well, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? All right, at this time, I'll go ahead and take a motion. We can either, based upon the findings as stated, we can recommend approval to the city commission. Based upon the findings as stated, we can recommend denial to the city commission, or we can table the issue for additional information. Ready to take a motion?
I recommend approval for the special use permit based upon the staff report and the findings, and allowing the applicant to have the extra 95 square feet that he needs to put in the system.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. Item number 2 is the annual review of the development regulations.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is just our preliminary discussion of the items within the development regulations that we've identified for potential revision over the last year, just in our course of using the document. So tonight, we're not going to be taking any action. We don't need any sort of motion. This is just sort of letting you all know what we've identified, making sure we have consensus that these are items that we should look at. And then going forward, we'll get the specifics written up for you to look at and take action on at the next meeting. So just to kind of jump in, the first item is in section or Article 3, which is the subdivision standards, and it relates to the applicability of the section and what the regulations deal with. And there was just one word that got left out in that section 3.02B. It should say the division of land into parcels or tracts of not more than 5 acres, et cetera. So it was just that not that got left out. So subdivisions of less than 5 acres would not be subject to the regulations that are in this section, which was the intent when they were put in. And that was the language that was in the version before we got these revised just a couple of years ago.
I'm a little concerned on that. We do have something that would cover.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, we have an administrative plat procedure for those smaller subdivisions that we look at as staff.
Be just a lot split type of
Yes,
thing.
so those are still reviewed. They're just not coming to the planning commission. They're not.
So you're not gonna end up with lots without access or with
No,
the keyhole
They're-
type
yep,
things?
they're all being reviewed.
Flag lots?
Yeah, this is basically just saying that they don't have to go through that whole platting procedure and through all of that approval process. The second issue, this is something that has come up a few times. As you're probably aware, we've got a lot of historic homes. A lot of them have sort of secondary buildings on the property, carriage houses, those types of structures. Right now, the regulations are written so that you could not have a second living quarters on the property. You can only have one primary structure with living quarters in that primary house. And that is a request that we've had a few times from people wanting to have living quarters either for a mother or, older children to live in that existing carriage house on the property. And right now, we cannot allow them to turn those buildings into living quarters. So I just sort of wanted to have a discussion about if that's something that the Planning Commission would like to take a look at. We can do some research and see what other cities, how they might handle that, and look at putting something in place to allow to have an approval process either administratively or have those types of requests come to the Planning Commission or just some way for people to be able to have that use, because right now it's just strictly prohibited.
So like the old houses, the ones like on Broadway, and then they have the carriage house in the
Yes.
back. So you're saying as of right now, they can't have people live there?
Correct,
Okay. Or even rent?
correct.
Okay.
So basically, you can convert your garage to an apartment, your detached garage.
Right, you cannot do that right now.
But even the old historical ones that were used for maybe butler's quarters and that, they can't?
They can't.
Okay.
I guess
As of right now?
There are some that are existing,
Yeah, that's, I
and so
thought.
those are allowed to continue. But we've had a number come in that, they have the structure on their property and, has maybe just been used as storage for the last
Okay.
20, 30 years. And now they have a desire to bring it back into a living quarters, and we cannot allow them to do that.
Okay.
I think it's probably an interesting thing to bring up. I think one of the issues might be that it's a zoning issue. It's single family. Well, single family means single family, so and I'm not trying to presuppose what the answer should be on this thing, but we'd have to be careful, because if it's allowed for a carriage house,
Right.
then it can be allowed for my basement, or it can be allowed for your garage, you know what I mean? So,
Right.
and all of a sudden, we don't have really single family anymore, we have multifamily.
Yeah.
But then again,
Yeah, or
in some cases, maybe it makes
gets
perfect
sold.
sense to do it, so, or maybe in some cases, we're doing it, but you're only allowing relatives to live there, or, something to that effect. So I think it's, if enough people have asked about it, I think it's worth looking at. But I don't think it's gonna be an easy or a cut and dry answer.
No.
So we can do some research then and see what other cities have done, and certainly talk to the city attorney about some issues that would be raised with this, and then bring back what we find to move forward with the direction.
Okay.
And I would assume that they'd have to have some sort of inspection prior to allowing family members to live there, so that it was in code
And
and
that
all
would
of
probably
that.
be part of it, if they're doing new construction or a new conversion, that would be subject to our standard building inspection process, and have to get the proper permits and inspections for all of that.
So we have no knowledge at this time of any home that has a carriage home in it, that's grandfather clause, are allowed to have relatives or people living in them at this
I
moment?
know there are some that are existing.
Right.
The house
But
next to
those,
the Carroll
yeah, we
Mansion.
don't,
Right,
yeah,
so-
we don't have any sort of listing of those or anything. It's just the ones that come in and are requesting to do it, and, they might say, well, the house two doors down the street from me has it, well, that was existing, and,
Right, they've had it.
right, and so
Got
no,
it.
we can't allow you to turn it into the same thing.
Thank you.
The thing that happens is that sooner or later, then the house is sold, you've got multifamily, you've got 2 rental units on the property, or somebody decides they're gonna rent it out instead of, they're not using it for a family member, then they're using it for somebody else. We have a rental house across the street from our house that's 4 bedrooms. And for 2 years, the owner rented it to 4 men up at college. And they were great as far as getting along with everybody in the neighborhood. They did just great, but there was parking problems. They seem to think that only one vehicle could park in a 4-vehicle driveway, and everybody else parked on the street. But, it's just gonna happen as your population gets denser and denser, then they're doing a lot of that over in Lawrence, aren't they? where they have carriage houses and things.
Yeah, in Lawrence, and parts of Kansas City that have the older neighborhoods. So it may be something that we would look at, allowing through a special use permit process, that they would need to come to this body and the city commission for review and approval, and so there's, different ways that it could be handled, but.
Okay, I think the consensus is yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead and go forward with
Yeah,
that.
so we'll
Yes.
start taking a look at that and
Okay.
bring you back some options to look at. Okay, the next one, in the zoning district, subdivision, or section, regarding size for detached garages. Garages, are limited to 900 square feet on parcels of 1 acre or less. You can go up to 1,200 square feet, or, if you're over 1 acre. And the way it's worded, it says that garages larger than that may be approved through a special use permit process. That should be, a variance going through the Board of Zoning Appeals, not through a special use permit process. So just change that language to, variance through BZA instead of a special use permit. And that's in line with other types of, variances that would be requested for a zoning district type issue. The next item is in the sign chapter. Right now, we don't have any sort of penalty for businesses that install signage without a permit. That's actually pretty common for cities to have some sort of penalty, some sort of fine or fee that can be assessed, for businesses that don't obtain a permit, before applying. Right now, we don't really have a way to compel someone to get a permit necessarily, other than writing them up and going through a court process. So, we would just be proposing to institute some sort of, fine structure. So if you put up your sign, we notice it and say, okay, you need to get your permit. If you don't get your permit, you can be fined X amount of dollars per day that you have it up without that permit.
Right.
So they would still be given basically a warning that
Yes,
they
Yeah.
don't have the permit, they need to take it down.
yes.
Or it would be, they'd be
Yeah,
fined.
or we could
retro.
find them. So just sort of have that,
Retroactive.
little stick, I guess, that we could use to compel it.
Yeah.
To,
You have a clause in there that allows the permit or the fee to be waived, once they submit an application, something like that.
yes, yeah.
Do we have is there anything else in the regulation where we actually have a fine referenced
For the signage,
for anything?
I don't believe so. I can't think of anything I've run across. Do you?
Our guest says that there is.
Alarms?
Alarms?
Yeah, and that's through, the permit process through the city clerk's process,
Okay.
office. Yeah, that's true.
So it can be done then,
Yeah.
it's not a legal issue.
Correct, yeah. Through our development regulations, no, we don't. But other city ordinances for things like the alarms, there are.
Doing out the signs is 1.5 times, so if it's a $50 sign, you're paying 75.
Oh, yeah, we can, increase the fee, yeah, yeah.
I guess just the main thing I would be concerned with is that it wouldn't be going to somebody and saying, you've got a sign up that's in violation, you owe us $100. So
Right.
basically we're saying, you've got a sign up that's in violation, you need to take it down, or you're going to start owing us $100 per
Right.
day.
Per day,
Right.
yeah.
Because it gets kind of confusing to me anyways, as
Yeah.
far as what kind of signs are approved and what aren't, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
yeah.
another situation where these types of fees can be useful is if you have someone putting up like we stain decks, little yard signs all over town in the right of way, and you can pick them up and then you can call the number and say, hey, we've got these fees in place. If we catch you putting up more,
Yes.
we can start assessing these fees to your business, and that's another way that it can be used. And that's I've seen typically then keeps them
Yeah.
free and clear once you've made people aware that that could happen.
The $100 a day, is that just based on what you're
That's just sort of
feeling for?
arbitrary. That's kind of what I've seen before, but we can certainly take a look and see what's used.
$1,000, no, I'm just, make it really prohibitive. No, I'm just kidding. I mean,
Yeah.
whatever's reasonable is fine, but.
I think we're good with that one.
Okay, sounds good. And then the next one, is in the sign section as well, just under the section of, signs excluded from permit. Just add decorative light pole banners in there, just to sort of specify. We've had a couple of, requests, so in business parking lots that have the tall light poles, and they'll wanna put up like a Christmas banner, Christmas banners on their light poles. You've probably seen, just kind of decorative, not advertising a sale or the business, just, for decoration. And just specify that those do not require a permit. We don't require them to get a permit, we haven't been doing that, but just call it out and just make it a little bit more clear, so there's not the question if people call in and ask.
Have it in writing, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Then the next one is again in the sign section, in the types of signs allowed in residential areas. We specifically allow neighborhood identification signs, so like you pull into the subdivision, you see a big monument sign that says, whatever the name of the subdivision is. We just don't have any size requirements in there. And as we're starting to have new residential areas built, we felt like it was probably a good time to just address that, and put some sort of, size restrictions in there, so, I don't have a suggestion at this point, but just wanted to make sure that you all were okay with that, and then we'll take a look at what other cities have as kind of a general, average for those subdivision monument signs and get something in there.
Sometimes you drive by a neighborhood that's identified with this dinky little monument and you wonder, my gosh, but most likely the sign regulations won't let them make it any bigger.
Yeah,
So,
Or you see it the other way, that it's huge.
right, so right now, just,
some of
yeah,
them do get pretty good.
no height requirement, no area requirement, so just, something in there, some sort of guidance. So we're starting to see more building, it hasn't come up, but just felt like we should address it before it does come up.
Now, that new development that's going in on 20th Street to, down by Eisenhower, they're probably gonna be wanting to put in some
Yeah, I'm sure they will,
nice monument signs.
yeah. So, we'll take a look at that, see what some other cities have in there. And then the next one is what we were just talking about, the solar standards, and whether or not limiting the installations to 500 square feet of collection area, without a special use permit is appropriate. I'm not sure what other cities do, but I think it's, worthwhile to take a look at what other cities have in. This is the first request that we've had for a residential installation that's been over 500 square feet. And this house isn't overly large, so I would anticipate as we see more homeowners, looking to put installations in, we'll probably be getting some more requests that are butting up at or over that 500 square foot,
Right.
regulation, and so whether or not the planning commission thinks that we might want to just do away with that, or change the wording, have a higher threshold, or
Or see,
just what the thought is.
see what other maybe surrounding cities, have, if they have
Yeah.
anything that's more. Otherwise, yeah, if more and more people go to this, it's a special permit every time, so.
And it may be something that, flush mounted solar panels don't have a, threshold, but if you're gonna put, an installation in your yard or something, but I'm not sure what other options are out there, but we can take a look at what other cities have in place.
And instead of square feet, I'm wondering, could you make it a percentage of the amount of roof line or amount of?
Yeah, and that's.
That way we
yeah,
wouldn't have to worry about a number, we just have to say it's.
Right. Yep, okay, so we'll take a look at, what some other cities have in place, get you some options on that one. The next one in the, definition section, just the definition for indoor commercial recreation. The term is in there, but somehow that definition was just left out. So, we need to get a definition in there for that. So we'll, just take a look at and find a definition, sort of a general, define it. We can pretty much guess what it is, but We need to have it in writing,
Right.
so that there's not a question when that comes up. And then onto the use table, there have been just a few that have come up over the last year that we felt like probably, we need to look at the districts that, specific uses are or are not allowed in. The first one is for live-work dwellings. Right now, they are just permitted in the RMX district, which is residential mixed use. We've had a couple of rezonings to the RMX district within the last year. Those are our first properties using that zoning designation, and just wanted to discuss whether or not that might be an appropriate use in some other districts, like whether or not in central business districts that might be appropriate, or office business, just if it might be appropriate in other places besides that RMX district.
You say there have been some requests or questions about that in other districts?
Well, we've had the question a couple of times, but we have, like I said, had the rezoning to RMX. I think we've had 2 requests this year that we've rezoned to RMX. But those live-work dwellings, it would be like the Carnegie Building,
Okay.
that you could have some, office space and some residential space, just some mixed use in that building, and whether or not that might be appropriate in other areas besides just the RMX. My initial thought would be that it's probably, or it might be okay in the central business district, since, we just kind of have that mix of uses anyway, and just go ahead and explicitly allow that.
Yeah, I think that's worth looking at.
Okay. Let's see. Then the next one, let's see, I don't think we have this on here. Yeah, so, we have had, a discussion a couple of times this year, for event venues, and right now that's not, it's not defined, or it's not a specifically allowed use. So something like a reception hall, whatever somebody might be wanting to use as an event venue, we don't have that listed in here as a use, and we don't have that defined where that might be appropriate. So that is one that we felt should be in here, since we have had a couple of discussions with people about it. The next is down in the utility section, private solar collection systems. Right now, they're permitted in all residential districts, although with a special use permit in RMX. I'm not sure why that was listed as needing a special use permit. And then they're allowed in all of the commercial districts, but not in industrial districts. It was our thinking that the private collection systems, which would be for residential use or a business to put solar collection systems in, that should be allowed in all districts if a property owner would want to pursue that for their property.
And what's the difference between the private solar collection system and what we just looked at tonight?
This is a private solar collection system, so it's allowed in residential districts,
Up to
just
500
up to 500, and then once it gets over 500, you need the special use permit. So, the private solar collection systems, they'd fall into what we were just talking about, taking a look at that threshold. But like I said, right now, they're not even allowed in industrial districts. So like if you had someone out at the business park, a user who wanted to put in a solar system for their property, it's just not even allowed through special use permit at all.
Okay.
So I'm not sure why that happened. We haven't had any requests, but, you may see more businesses going that way, and it seems like it should be something available to them. And then, commercial solar collection systems, and that would be for like a utility company if they were to set up an array to use their grid on. Right now, they are allowed by special use permit just in industrial districts. wanted to talk about if maybe, since they're allowed through special use permit in those districts, if maybe we wanted to expand that and say that they could request a special use permit in other districts. So, you know, there may be an instance where, like out along 20th Street, we have had an application for a new electricity substation out there. So an electrical substation is allowed in residential districts, but a solar collection system is not. And so that might be something that we want to take a look at. I'm not sure if energy companies are using those and putting up, you know, collection grids of their own. But again, that might be something that we start seeing more in the future. And so it might be a good idea to have a mechanism with which they could request a permit, not allow it by right, but have that opportunity for them to bring forth their plans and have it reviewed by the city. And then the same thing for commercial wind energy systems. Right now, again, they're just allowed in by special use permit in industrial districts. We haven't had any requests for any in any place. I'm not sure if in this area they'll start becoming more prevalent. You know, in some areas of the country they are pretty prevalent. But just sort of have that discussion whether or not we want to have the mechanism available for them to request a permit to locate them in other areas other than just an industrial district.
Yeah, I think that would be a good discussion. I mean, I think they're different, totally different. I mean,
Correct.
one's totally passive and one definitely is not, you know, so.
Yes. One's a little more, yeah.
But yes,
intrusive, but-
as far as going forward and discussing it, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah, and right now, it's not allowed at all if someone were to come in, and, you know, there was some property out off 20th or Tonganoxie or something, and they wanted to look at putting something in, we couldn't even, you know, have a discussion with them about whether or not that was an appropriate use for a location. And then just the final one, let's see. We had the use of athletic facilities, and it is defined in the definitions. Right now, that's just located under commercial services, and we wanted to move that to recreation and entertainment subsection. And we have had this come in a couple of times, and we always have to hunt for it. It's just not in an intuitive place. It just feels like it should be in the recreation
Right.
section. So don't want to change the uses of the districts, just move it up to a different section.
Now, if any of the commissioners come up with other things that they think should be looked at as well,
Yep.
any issue with them sending that to you as
Yep,
far
let
as?
me know, and I'll start working on, some more specifics, taking a look at, doing some research on some of the ones that we've talked about, get you some more details for our next meeting. We do have to have a public hearing for any of these changes, so we'll get all that put together, schedule a public hearing, have some more in-depth discussions about all of these, and then get a recommendation from this body to move on to the city commission and get some changes made.
Okay.
Very good.
I have one other thing.
Sure.
Just a small correction. I mean, we approved this gentleman's special use
Yes.
permit, and I know Linda said 595 square feet, but it's 598.
Yes, and then,
Square
yeah.
feet. I didn't know if
Yeah.
that was, a big deal, but,
Yep. I think we knew the intent, and so
Right.
we'll have that reflected.
Take three, yeah.
you said
Yeah.
595 square feet, and it's 598. I didn't know
Oh,
if that
well,
was a big
I was
deal.
just
So I just
trying
wanted
to
to.
go from memory. My memory isn't that great.
No,
But
I
I did-
appreciate the clarification.
Okay.
Yep. We were gonna have that in the, minutes
wants that
anyway, but
3
it's good
feet.
to have it on. Yep.
Any other business for the commission?
We have no other business?
Anything from the commissioners?
I can't believe it's been 3 years ago when we had a subcommittee to look at these regulations. For some of us were on it 3 years ago. But I think it makes sense that every now and then that we revisit this and take a look, like you're saying, changes that need to be made after maybe looking at other communities and seeing what's probably realistic.
Sure.
So I think it's great, but I know 3 years ago, we went through an extensive review of this on these regulations. And it's evident you did a great job in that, Julie, 3 years ago, but I think we just need to fine tune a few of them, like we're mentioning.
Yeah, and I mean, with anything, as you use it day to day, you find things that you hadn't
Right.
thought of, or just that, maybe need to be adjusted a little bit, and that's fairly typical.
Okay, well, everybody have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and we're adjourned.
Yep, we'll see you in January.
We are?